Some motorcycles are so deadly, they should immediately be banned forever. Causing the worst crashes in history with the most casualties, these bikes have earned their reputation for being demons on wheels. Today, we're counting down the 15 deadliest motorcycles ever made. You won't believe how much doom the #1 bike has caused. Let's start with number 15, a Harley muscle machine that was built to impress, but ended up turning on its own riders. What went wrong? Don't let the classic Harley badge fool you. The Harley-Davidson Sportster S is a wolf in cruiser's clothing, and it's hungry for blood. With a 1,252cc Revolution Max engine pumping out 121 horsepower, this bike is anything but tame. Its short wheelbase and stiff suspension make it twitchy and unpredictable at speed. One wrong move, and you're wrestling a bucking bronco, not cruising down Main Street. The brakes? A single disc up front and one in the rear. Both Brembo, yes, but for a machine that can hit over 130 miles per hour, it's not exactly overbuilt. The Sportster S looks tame but delivers brutal performance that catches riders off guard. It's underbraked for its power capabilities, and its misleading cruiser appearance tricks riders into thinking it's a docile machine. In reality, it's a twitchy, unpredictable beast that can catch even experienced riders off guard. The short wheelbase makes it unstable at high speeds, especially on rough pavement or during quick direction changes. What makes it even riskier is the styling. It looks calm and welcoming, which can lure in less experienced riders. But once you open it up, the calm mask drops and the mayhem begins. If you're not ready for its raw delivery, you're in for a wild and possibly painful ride. If number 15 was chaos on two wheels, number 14 is worse, a superbike that caused an insane amount of catastrophic incidents. The Suzuki GSXR100 was the original superbike. 1,127cc, 145 horsepower, and a top speed of 175 miles per hour. But the chassis just couldn't keep up with the ambition. Push it hard, and the frame would twist, the suspension would squirm, and you'd find yourself in a high-speed wobble, praying for mercy. No traction control, no ABS, just raw, unfiltered power and your reflexes. One tank slapper, and you're airborne, wondering how you got there. As the engine evolved over the years and got more aggressive, the frame and suspension didn't always keep up. Riders who went full throttle found themselves wrestling a machine that twisted under pressure. High-speed wobbles, especially on uneven roads or during hard cornering, became a known issue. At high speeds, even the smallest mistake could send a rider into a tank slapper or worse. The GSXR100's chassis couldn't handle the power, leading to high-speed wobbles and tank slappers that could throw you off without warning. With no electronic safety aids, riders were left to their own devices and skill levels. This bike was a test of skill and nerve, and it didn't offer second chances or forgiveness. Many crashes were blamed not on the bike's outright speed, but on how unpredictable it became at the limit. Think superbikes are risky? Number 13 rewinds to the 1920s, when speed was a gamble with death, and even the biggest legends couldn't outrun fate. What took them down? Step back to the 1920s, when the Bragg Superior SS100 was the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles, and a death sentence for the unprepared. With a 998cc V-twin and 73 horsepower, it was guaranteed to hit 100 miles per hour, a speed that was pure insanity for its time. But here's the catch. It had a rigid frame, primitive brakes, and zero suspension. No helmets, no safety gear. Just you, the wind, and a prayer. Even T.E. Lawrence of Arabia met his end on one of these beasts. The SS100 was a marvel of its era, but it was also a recipe for disaster. The rigid frame and primitive brakes meant that any mistake at speed was likely to be your last. With no modern safety gear available, riders were completely exposed to the elements and the consequences of their actions. The tires weren't designed for triple-digit speeds, the brakes were rudimentary, and the rigid chassis had no forgiveness. At full speed, the bike shook, rattled, and bounced over bumps like a live wire. If you lost control, there were no crash helmets to save you. You just got what you got. This bike didn't just break speed records, it broke riders. The roads of the 1920s weren't built for 100 miles per hour, and neither were the riders. But if primitive technology was deadly, number 12 reveals Harley's most sinister experiment that turned cruiser dreams into high-speed nightmares. The VRod was Harley's wild child, a 1,131cc Porsche-developed engine with over 115 horsepower, wrapped in a cruiser's disguise that fooled many riders. But this wasn't your granddad's Harley that rumbled down the highway at a leisurely pace. The VRod was twitchy at speed, heavy in the corners, and had a nasty habit of getting unsettled when you least expected it. Riders who thought they were getting a laid-back cruiser were in for a rude awakening that could end badly. The VRod's high-speed instability and twitchy handling made it a challenge for even experienced riders who knew what they were doing. Its heavy frame struggled to stay planted, and its dragster performance caught many off guard who expected typical Harley behavior. The long wheelbase made it tough to handle in tight turns, the low foot pegs scraped easily, and at high speeds, the front end felt light and unsettled. Braking was another issue. Despite having dual front discs, the bike's weight and momentum made stopping harder than most expected. It was a muscle cruiser dressed in Harley's leather, sleek and seductive, but built with a different kind of violence under the hood. Many riders who came to the VRod for the style stayed for the thrill, and some got more than they bargained for. From street deception to dirt bike carnage, number 11 created the original street assassin that earned the most feared nickname in motorcycling history, the Widowmaker. The 1969 Kawasaki H1 Mach 3 was a 499cc two-stroke triple with 60 horsepower in a 384-pound frame that couldn't handle what it was asked to do. The power hit like a sledgehammer, with no warning and no forgiveness for mistakes. The frame flexed under pressure like a fishing rod. The suspension was overwhelmed by the forces, and the drum brakes were a joke when you needed to stop. The H1 Mach 3 violent power delivery and inadequate chassis made it a handful at any speed, from the parking lot to the highway. Power delivery on the H1 was brutal. The torque came high in the rev range, and when it hit hard. There was no smooth throttle control, no forgiveness. You'd think you were fine, and then suddenly the bike would yank you forward with no warning, leaving your body to figure out the consequences. The frame was basic, the swing arm flexed under pressure, and the suspension was completely overwhelmed at high speeds. Cornering felt more like a gamble than a skill, and the brakes, drum front and rear, were nowhere near enough to safely stop something this aggressive. The bike was notorious for high sides and sudden frame failures, earning its Widowmaker nickname through blood and broken bones. Stories of violent high sides, frame failures, and uncontrollable wobbles became common. From two-stroke terror to single-cylinder savagery, number 10 proves what happens when engineers put 8 cylinders of pure terror into a 1950s death trap. Imagine a 500cc, liquid-cooled V8 engine in a motorcycle. Back in the 1950s, the Moto Guzzi V8 was a marvel of engineering, but it was also a nightmare on two wheels. With 78 horsepower and a top speed over 170 miles per hour, it was decades ahead of its time. The problem? Tires that couldn't grip, brakes that couldn't stop, and a chassis that flexed like a wet noodle. Even factory racers were terrified to ride it at full potential. The Moto Guzzi V8 was too advanced for its own good. The rest of the bike simply couldn't keep up with the engine's performance. In an era where most bikes had simple drum brakes, basic frames, and skinny tires, the V8 pushed performance into territory that no other part of the bike could comfortably handle. It had a screaming red line and required aggressive throttle input just to get into its power band. The slightest miscalculation could send the rear wheel sliding or the bike shaking violently beneath the rider. The tires couldn't grip, the brakes couldn't stop, the suspension couldn't absorb the force, and the frame flexed under pressure like a twig. Even factory riders were scared of it. Many chose not to race it at all. The engine was notoriously complex and hard to maintain, and very few mechanics could keep it running properly. But before we dive into modern madness, let's go back to where it all began, because number 9 proved that the world's first superbike was also its first death trap. The Vincent Black Shadow was the world's first superbike, capable of 125+ miles per hour in the 1950s, when most cars struggled to reach 70. With 55 horsepower, a flexible chassis, and basic suspension that belonged on a bicycle, it was a handful at any speed above walking pace. The drum brakes were barely adequate for stopping a bicycle, let alone a motorcycle doing triple digits. The bike wobbled dangerously at high speeds, and even police riders crashed off duty when they pushed it too hard. The Black Shadow's combination of high speed and primitive technology made it a recipe for disaster that was waiting to happen. The bike had power, but it didn't have the modern frame rigidity, suspension, or braking systems needed to keep that power under control. Its chassis flexed at high speeds. Its brakes, dual drums, were barely adequate, especially on wet roads or during emergency stops. The handling was twitchy, and one small mistake at full tilt meant the rider was gone. Even experienced racers respected the Vincent's bite. British police used it, but many crashed off duty. It had power, but zero forgiveness. The Vincent was beautiful, bold, and brutally fast for its time, but speed without control is a deadly mix. The Black Shadow earned its dark reputation through countless accidents and near misses, proving that being first doesn't always mean being safe. From vintage death traps, number 8 earned the name Lawn Dart Launcher for a reason. But what made this motocross machine so dangerous? Riders still whisper about it today. The 1971 Suzuki TM400 Cyclone was a motocross bike that terrified even the pros who made their living on two wheels. With a 396cc two-stroke engine making 40 horsepower in a featherweight frame. It was all or nothing, no middle ground, no compromise. The power delivery was unpredictable. One second you're crawling along, the next you're airborne and wondering how you got there. The frame was too light, the suspension too soft, and the brakes barely there when you needed them most. The TM400's unpredictable power delivery and lightweight frame made it nearly impossible to control, even for experienced riders. There was no smooth throttle response. It was either off or violently on. Riders often compared it to flipping a switch. One second you were crawling, and the next the front wheel was in the air and the rear was sliding out. The TM400 was dangerously light, just around 220 pounds dry, and the steel frame flexed under stress. The suspension bottomed out hard on jumps, and with drum brakes front and rear, stopping power was always a gamble. Even experienced riders struggled to keep it under control, and beginners didn't stand a chance. It didn't take long for the Cyclone to earn its other names, the Bone Breaker and the Widowmaker of the dirt. Riders were constantly being thrown off, and the bike's reputation for launching riders into the air was well-deserved and documented. But before Suzuki terrorized dirt tracks, number 7 is a slingshot of destruction disguised as a cruiser. Pray you never twist the throttle. The Yamaha VMax is the original muscle bike, a 1,197cc V4 with 145 horsepower and the infamous V-boost system that turned acceleration into an art form. When that V-boost kicked in at 6,000 RPM, it was like lighting a fuse on a stick of dynamite. The acceleration was brutal, the frame and suspension were overwhelmed, and the brakes were barely adequate for the chaos it could unleash. It looked like a cruiser, but it launched like a dragster. The VMax's slingshot acceleration caught riders off guard, and its heavy weight made it difficult to control once things went sideways. The bike was heavy, nearly 600 pounds wet, but its frame and suspension weren't built to handle the kind of raw power it delivered. At full throttle, the VMax could feel like it was tearing itself apart. Front-end lift, rear-end wiggle, and mid-corner instability were all on the table. It didn't help that early models had limited braking performance, relying on dual front discs and a single rear disc that simply couldn't rein in the chaos once it was unleashed. What made it even more dangerous was its ability to fool riders. It looked like a cruiser, rode like a muscle bike, but at heart, it was a barely contained drag racer. Many riders bought it expecting something manageable, only to realize too late that it was raw, relentless, and almost impossible to tame. Think the VMax was bad? Number 6 made seasoned racers walk away, because this bike didn't just crash, it killed. You think you're ready for a race bike on the street? Think again. The Suzuki RG500 Gamma is a wolf in sheep's clothing. A 500cc two-stroke rocket with a power band that's more like a landmine than a throttle. Below 6,000 RPM, it's docile, almost boring. You might even think you've got it figured out, but twist the throttle a little too far, and suddenly you're catapulted into hyperspace. The power hits all at once, launching you into a high-side crash before you even realize what happened. This bike was designed for Grand Prix legends like Barry Sheena and Marco Lucanelli, not your average weekend warrior. This is a road-going version of a GP race bike, with little power below 6,000 RPM, and then an explosive surge that's nearly impossible to control. The instantaneous power band caused countless high-side crashes, making it uncontrollable for average riders. The RG500 Gamma doesn't just punish mistakes, it makes sure you never forget them. Peak power comes in at around 9,000 RPM with a dip to 9,500. But if you miss the shift and hit 9,600 RPM, you're instantly catapulted past 12,000 RPM and beyond the supposed top speed. This second phase of the power band happens almost instantaneously and was the cause of many high-side crashes on track and on the road. If you're not a pro, you're just a crash statistic waiting to happen. If you value your bones, this is one bike that should stay in the museum, not on the road. Think a race bike on the street is terrifying? Number 5 will take brutality to a whole new level. But what made this bike so unhinged? Even seasoned riders feared the throttle. The Mico 700 is the most powerful two-stroke production dirt bike ever built, and it wears that title like a badge of honor. With a 685cc single-cylinder engine making over 80 horsepower and weighing less than 250 pounds, it's a rocket on dirt that defies physics. There are no electronic aids, no traction control, no safety nets. Just you and a bike that's constantly trying to throw you off like an angry bull. The power-to-weight ratio is explosive, and even experienced riders struggle to keep it under control for more than a few seconds. The Mico 700's explosive power delivery and complete lack of electronic aids make it a challenge for even the most skilled riders in the world. The torque of this massive two-stroke single meant that however gentle your throttle hand was, it was almost impossible to control. The chassis wasn't the problem with this bike. The engine was just brutal. That engine was, and still is, used in sidecar cross racing. But even with the sidecar attached, it will tear your arms off, given the slightest chance. The original bike weighed just 100 kilos and produced over 80 brake horsepower as standard. The bike is constantly trying to throw you off, and any mistake can result in a crash that you might not walk away from. There have been very few bikes made over the years that can offer the sort of adrenaline rush you get from riding a Mico 700, but most riders don't ask to ride it again. From dirt bike brutality to vintage elegance that killed legends, Number 4 unleashes modern American madness, a full car engine wedged between two wheels. Who in their right mind would ride it? Ever wanted to ride a motorcycle with a full Chevy V8 engine? The Hos V8 makes that dream a reality, and a nightmare that you'll never forget. With engine sizes from 5.7 liters to 8.2 liters and over 450 horsepower, this bike weighs more than 1,100 pounds, but still hits 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. There's no traction control, no ABS, no safety aids of any kind, and stopping requires a runway, not a brake lever. It's a spectacle that draws crowds, but it's also a hazard that can kill. The Hos V8's sheer size and power make it a challenge to control for anyone who isn't a professional stunt rider. It shoves a Chevy V8 engine, yes, a literal car engine, between two wheels. That's more power than most sports cars, but it weighs over 1,100 pounds, making it nearly twice as heavy as a standard sport bike. Yet it still hits 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. That's brutal acceleration on a bike this massive. But here's where things get sketchy. It doesn't corner well, it's hard to stop, and it's definitely not forgiving. Dual front discs try to slow it, but this thing needs a runway, not a brake lever. Maneuvering at low speeds feels like steering a refrigerator on wheels. High-speed riding means you're just holding on and praying. The lack of safety aids and the bike's massive weight mean that stopping and maneuvering are always a gamble with physics. One twist too far, and you're not riding, it's riding you into the ground. From gas-guzzling giants to silent electric assassins, number 3 kills without making a sound and strikes faster than your brain can process. The Lightning LS218 is the world's fastest electric motorcycle, topping out at 218 miles per hour. And it's silent but deadly in ways that will terrify you. With 200 horsepower and instant torque that hits like a lightning bolt, there's no engine noise to warn you of the impending chaos. There's no buildup, no crescendo of sound, just a sudden, relentless surge of acceleration that can catch you completely off guard. The LS218 doesn't just challenge traditional motorcycles, it humiliates them while remaining eerily quiet about it. The LS218's instant torque delivery and complete lack of warning sounds make it a challenge to control for even experienced riders who think they know what they're doing. With 200 horsepower and a jaw-dropping 168 pound-feet of torque, this silent assassin rockets to a mind-blowing top speed of 218 miles per hour, making it the fastest street-legal production motorcycle on the planet. And it does it all without a single gear shift. There's no engine growl, no mechanical drama, just instant, relentless acceleration that hits harder than most superbikes even realize. One twist of the throttle and you're not accelerating. You're being launched silently like a missile with no warning siren. The bike's acceleration is relentless and unforgiving, and any mistake can result in a crash that happens faster than your brain can process. There's no engine note to tell you when you're approaching the danger zone. Just silence followed by chaos. The LS218 doesn't just break records, it breaks riders who think they can handle the future. But electric silence is nothing compared to number 2, the screaming fury of an actual jet engine that turns motorcycling into aviation without wings. The MTT420R is what happens when engineers ask, "What if?" And nobody has the sense to say, "Maybe we shouldn't." This is what you get when you strap a Rolls-Royce Allison turbine engine, yes, an actual jet engine, to a motorcycle frame. With 420 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, it's more aircraft than bike, more physics experiment than transportation. There's no clutch, no gears, no traditional motorcycle controls, just pure turbine power that responds to your throttle input like a fighter jet. The MTT420R's jet engine power and complete lack of traditional motorcycle controls make it a challenge for even the most experienced riders in the world. Powered by an actual Rolls-Royce Allison turbine engine, this beast delivers a whopping 420 horsepower and an absurd 500 pound-feet of torque. Its estimated top speed is over 250 miles per hour. That's not just fast, it's aircraft-level dangerous. Riding the 420R isn't transportation. It's a physics experiment with consequences. There's no clutch, no gears, just a twist-and-go throttle that feeds you straight into the hands of G-force. The acceleration is aircraft-level dangerous, and the estimated top speed is over 250 miles per hour. There's no learning curve, no gradual buildup, just instant access to power that can kill you faster than you can blink. This bike isn't just rare. It's unhinged, uncontrollable, and utterly insane. It's a ride for the bold, the brave, and maybe the slightly unwell who have given up on the concept of self-preservation. And yes, it'll cost you more than a Lamborghini. But honestly, what price do you put on strapping yourself to a jet engine and praying for traction? But even jet-powered insanity is nothing compared to our number 1, the ultimate death machine. A supercharged monster so dangerous it's banned from every road on Earth. At the top of the list is the undisputed king of danger, the Kawasaki Ninja H2R, a machine so extreme, so powerful, so utterly insane that it's banned from public roads worldwide. And that's not marketing hype. That's a legal reality based on the fact that this bike is simply too dangerous for civilian use. With a supercharged 998cc inline-4 engine producing 310 to 326 horsepower, depending on conditions, this bike is so extreme that it needs carbon fiber winglets just to stay on the ground at speed. The H2R can hit over 249 miles per hour, and it needs every aerodynamic aid it can get to prevent it from becoming airborne. The H2R's combination of extreme power, mind-bending speed, and complete lack of road legality make it a challenge for even the most skilled riders in the world. This supercharged beast is so powerful, it's banned from public roads. And rightly so. With a 998cc supercharged inline-4 engine, the H2R produces 310 horsepower, boosted to 326 horsepower, with ram air, and reaches a brain-melting top speed of over 249 miles per hour. That's not just fast, that's blink, and you're in another postcode fast. Its carbon fiber winglets aren't just for show, they're essential to keep this unholy missile from lifting off the ground. The frame, the suspension, the tires, every piece is straining to hold this monster together under full throttle. Even professional racers approach it with caution, respect, and a healthy dose of fear. This isn't just a motorcycle, it's a mechanical dare, a track-only missile that blurs the line between man and machine in ways that can be fatal. The H2R doesn't just accelerate, it teleports you through space and time while your brain struggles to keep up with what's happening. One mistake, one moment of inattention, one slight miscalculation, and it's game over. There's no second chance, no do-over, no learning from your mistakes because you won't survive them. The supercharged engine delivers power in a way that defies human reflexes, and the speeds it can achieve are simply beyond what most riders can safely handle. The H2R isn't just the most dangerous motorcycle ever built. It's the one that should never have left the drawing board, the one that proves that just because we can build something doesn't mean we should. If these death-defying machines got your adrenaline pumping, you're not done yet. Click that video on your screen right now for even more heart-stopping motorcycle madness.